Hi. Let's just get right into it. Let's review Asterigos. I think that's how it's said. Let's go to the tripod. Hi, welcome to the tripod. Now, I'm not going to do what a lot of reviewers do. A lot of reviewers will explain what the game is before they review it, but like odds are, if you're here for a review, you somewhat know what the game is, and you're just kind of looking to see if it's any good. Like, don't you hate when you see an article about like a game update, and then like they have to explain what the entire game is in a giant paragraph before down at the bottom? It's like I know what the game is here. You don't have to explain it. We're all here because of that. And right now I'm just wasting your time, so let's get into it. This game has some pretty cool weapons. You can upgrade them, and like a typical, Souls like you upgrade your weapons. There's something there I think everybody can enjoy. Although I can't imagine not using the staff for the long range attacks. I have no idea what the game is like without that, but I used sword and shield and I used the staff for magic, and it was basically how I play Souls games. Magic, sword and shield, you can block, you have long range attacks. I can't imagine it without that. I suggest you pick two weapons. You can always have two at a time, and you stick with them so you can level them up fully. If you constantly mess around trying to find ones you like, yeah, that might be fun, but you might not ever fully level those weapons up. You might, but I don't know. I didn't fully upgrade my one weapon until the end of the game, so I suggest you find two you like real quick and you stick with those two weapons. Again, I suggest the staff. The weapons do feel good though. Everything felt pretty good, and that's a good because most of us are here for the gameplay in these type of games. And what I played of the other weapons felt good. The sword and shield feels really good. Even if the blocking doesn't feel like it's gonna work, it usually does. Even it can get a little weird to get used to, but everything's pretty adequate. The game looks nice. The art direction is completely different than most of the Souls games we've played, even like Steel Rising. It is very, very, I hate to say this, but like Fortnite Souls or Disney Souls, where is yes, it has nothing to do with Disney and it has nothing to do with Fortnite. The art style, you could look at like your main character and think that's a Fortnite skin or a Disney princess or something, but it's in a Souls style game. And it's very weird and kind of off putting at first, but you kind of get used to it, and it just, after a while, it just kind of makes sense. You don't really think about it much. But everything looks nice. The scenery is very nice. Nothing in the game looks bad. It looks really good. And if I had to compare it to Steel Rising, I would say Steel Rising has the more realistic look, but Asterigos has less of a like you're not gonna run into like some place that, like holy crap, this doesn't even look finished. Where sometimes in Steel Rising that happened. Like Asterigos looks good. I hope I'm saying that right. Another thing is there's little details that makes the game feel complete. Like you see a little bit of wildlife every once in a while, some little creatures sitting around by the water. It does feel like a living world for the most part. It was never really like jarring to just see the enemies. They look somewhat natural where they're at. Let's go back to gameplay for a second. It is like Dark Souls in the sense where you kill things and you get like souls. I don't remember what this game calls them. It may have said it, but I don't remember. But you do collect like a souls like thing. The difference is though you don't use that to level up in this game, where you do need it for currency to level up. I can't believe I left this out. You level your character also by like a traditional XP bar. Once it reaches the end, you gain more points, and you use those points to level up. And you also can get skills and abilities, and there's like a whole bunch of stuff you can pick from. And you can also get different skills for different weapons, and you can add points to like your attack power and your health and all that stuff. What you need to level up in this game is crafting items. You find gems and random things throughout the game, and you bring them back to the blacksmith. The blacksmith levels everything up for you, but you need your souls like stuff as currency to pay for it, but that's not what you need to level up, which is kind of a bummer. But I totally understand why they did it the way they did, because the way this game works, if you could level up with the souls stuff you earn, you would have an endless supply and you could level up too fast. You finding the things to do it. I will say there are some items that I don't know if I ever found. Like there was one weapon that I liked, the sword and shield. I was never able to get it all the way to 10. I think I was at 9. I was able to fully upgrade my staff though. But some of the stuff is pretty hard to come across. When you die, you do not have to go back to retrieve your soul's stuff. um, but you do lose a little bit of it every time you die. So if you have, 10,000, you might die and come back and only have 8,000 some left. But you earn it very quickly. And there's even gems and stuff that make it so you can, like, well, whatever they would be. It's like your rings and stuff, but there's like this gem thing that you can earn more as you go. But yeah, you don't have to collect them and go all the way back to where you died to get them. You just kind of slowly lose them the more you die. But you also can easily get back what you lost. It does have things like souls where the rings you wear. This game does have those type of things where you can change stats, but it's not as impactful really as the rings you get in Dark Souls. This one just kind of slightly changes, how resistant you are to like fire or lightning and stuff like that. I kind of just picked some and stuck with it. I don't know, it didn't really matter that much. One big recommendation I can give is to change the controls so when your attacks are on the bumpers. I can't imagine playing this game where it's like your light attack being square and your heavy attack being triangle, or X and Y, I think, for the Xbox controller, because while that might feel normal to somebody that's really into like Devil May Cry, it gets awkward because when you want to aim your staff, there's an attack where you aim your staff and you shoot it. You hold the trigger, but then you would have to hit uh, the top button to fire it, but you need that thumb to aim, you know. So I like it being able to fire traditionally. Like you hold this button, you fire with this button, you look. Because I don't know how unless you claw, you're not going to be able to fire. So I heavily recommend adjusting the controls so they're more like the Souls games where you're attacking with the two buttons up top. Also, try to unlock fast travel as soon as possible. I think when the game starts, you have like 3 or 4 main missions you got to do. Do those. Don't spend too much time exploring right away. Get those done so you can fast travel. This game is such a pain in the ass if you don't have fast travel. The game does have some really cool boss fights, kind of. It depends on what difficulty you play on. But the boss fights are definitely, some of them are really in depth and deeper than I expected. There is one boss fight, though, that I think sucks. And I'm not going to ruin it, but I think it's just complete crap. But most of the boss fights were interesting, and you could tell that they tried something. They tried to make them more than just an arena and you fight a boss. Some of the boss fights are that. Some of them are multi-layered. I don't want to ruin anything, but it was a little more than I expected. One big point I would like to make, though, is if you play this game on the hardest difficulty, the only difference between that and normal, easy, hard is numbers of how much HP you have, how much damage the enemies do. Dark Souls is hard in a different way that I can't explain. It's got this base thing, whereas this game is only hard on the hardest setting because of numbers. And I think this game is a perfect example of why Souls games do not and should not have easy modes or hard modes. It should have one base difficulty because when you're playing it, it doesn't feel evened out. It feels off. It feels artificial. I can't explain it, but I think if you play this game on hard, its hardest difficulty, you will understand perfectly why these types of games should not have these settings. It doesn't feel right. Now, I think I said this in my Steel Rising review. People might be like, well, why are you comparing this to Dark Souls so much? It's not Dark Souls, it's its own game. That's right, but it's a Souls-like. The devs were comparing this game to Dark Souls the whole time they were making it, okay? It's a Souls-like. Yes, we can compare the two. The developers definitely care about this game. They definitely care about the story they created for this game. They definitely care about the world they created and all the characters they put into it. When you play this game, you feel how much they care and all the love they put into this game. Everything is almost overdone. This game has NPCs everywhere. They're behind doors, they're standing around, they're at the hub world. Everywhere you go, there are people to talk to, for better or for worse. If you were to sit down and compare this game to Steel Rising, this one definitely goes above and beyond what that game offered. Now, for me personally, I don't know if that's a good thing. To a lot of people, it might be, and it definitely seems like a more complete finished product than Steel Rising did. It kind of can get in the way of itself a little bit. Asterigos definitely wants you to know the story. It's not vague like Dark Souls. You don't have to read item descriptions or anything like Dark Souls. Asterigos will constantly interrupt itself for exposition and story. And for me, it really kind of got in the way of enjoying the parts of the game that I enjoyed. The game really does interrupt itself, and it has so much exposition, and not every line is voice acted. So you start playing the game, and okay, you're paying attention to the story, but then you go up and talk to these NPCs, and they're not voice acted. And you're like, okay, so maybe they're not as important, but some of the things they do are important. Like the blacksmith, not everything she says is voice acted, but it can be very important. So you either you kind of can't tell, like, well, okay, well, I guess they wanted to save resources by not, fully voice acting everything and only voice acting the most important parts to the story. But there are important things that, you know, should have been voice acted that weren't. I did get to a point where I just started skipping stuff because there's just too much dialogue. There's too much dialogue, and you might think I sound childish or something, but trust me, if you play this game, there's too much dialogue. And the problem is, you start skipping stuff, and you're like, oh, okay, well, this part's voice acted. I can read the first little bits of it and get an idea what's going on. But the other problem is the stuff that's not slightly voice acted. It can be like, oh, this is a key feature of the game, and they don't even say it out loud, and you can kind of miss that. My suggestion is, if you're gonna skip stuff, just skip everything, but make sure you go through it all. You don't have to read it or listen to it, but make sure you definitely go through every option that the NPCs have, and exhaust all that dialogue. I look at it as, hey, as long as my character knows what everybody said and what's happening, that's good enough for me. One of the problems with skipping, though, is this game, you feel kind of lost a lot. It relies on its dialogue a lot for you to kind of know what you're doing and where you're supposed to go for a while there. And when you start skipping it, you will feel kind of lost. And it might take you a little bit longer to find a certain place. The game's not very good at letting you know exactly where to go sometimes. Like, it'll say, go to this place. But then you pull up the pathetic map they have, and you're like, well, that place isn't even written on here. So it can be kind of a pain in the butt to navigate. There is no mini map, there is no map. Elden Ring had a map, and that was pretty good. This game has like a drawing of an overworld, but you really have no idea where you're at. It doesn't say you are here. I mean, it kind of does. Like, it'll say, if you go to the places where you rest, it'll be like, you're here. But if you wander away from that, you have no idea where you're at. I don't know. I don't think I'm alone here. I might be, but when it comes to Souls-like games, we come for the gameplay. Asterigos constantly interrupts the gameplay with its story. It might be okay with you. It gets old fast, though. Like I said, you can tell the devs really care about their game and their story. But as much as they care about their story, it really gets in the way when you stop caring about the story and you constantly get interrupted every couple minutes with exposition and dialogue and characters trying to talk at you. When you stop caring, it really shows how much extra there is, and it can be a problem because at a certain point you're like, okay, I don't give a shit anymore. Let's just get to the end of this game. They probably could have left out over half of all the dialogue, and you would have still had a good idea of what's happening in the game. I had a pretty decent idea of the story, and the game wraps itself up really well at the end. Like once you finish it, the game has this very long like, here's what happened to everybody you met in this game. Like I said, they really care about the game. They really care about the story. Unfortunately, halfway through, I just stopped caring. There definitely is a point of no return in this game, though. You will get to a point where this game's like, hey, if you go any further, you can't finish any side quests or anything. I appreciate that feature, but when I got to that point, I didn't give a single solitary shit. And I was like, yes, let's just go to the end of this game and let's cook this turkey. Let's finally end this thing. But the gameplay is good. This game feels super good to play, and that's why I kept coming back. Even though that it was so story heavy that it got on my nerves and I started skipping everything, it was very satisfying and addicting to play. And that's what kept me coming back. I wanted to see this thing to the end. I enjoyed the gameplay, even if by the end I was like, okay, when I'm done with this, I'm never playing it again. I might go back to it one day. It might be fun to play on easy, just so you can run through the game and experience that fun combat. But at the same time, see, this is another problem I have with these types of games that have easy mode. There really feels like no, okay, where am I supposed to be? On normal, I guess. But then if you're on normal, you're missing out on the difficulty. If you're on difficulty, you're missing out on the just the chill experience. They force you to constantly make like this decision where I think when it comes to Souls-like games, there should be one set difficulty, and you shouldn't have to constantly juggle these decisions. You should experience what was intended. I don't know what was intended with this game. That's the problem. I like being able to go to my friend and be like, "Hey, did you play this game?" "Yeah," and we had the exact same experience. If somebody plays this game on easy and somebody plays this game on the hardest difficulty, that's almost like two different games. So to sum it up, this game's pretty good. Everything this game does, it does well. Even if it does it a little bit too much. Maybe a little too much and for a little bit too long. There was a point in this game where I was like, oh, I could be getting to the end, and then you realize, oh, I'm only halfway through. That probably would have been a good place to end the game, but you, like I said, this game is full of things. And it doesn't feel lazy either. Like everything in this game doesn't feel slapped together for runtime. I mean, or playtime or whatever. It feels like they had a thing they wanted to do and they did it. But holy crap, you could have dialed it back a little bit. So to conclude this really long, I didn't expect it to be this long review. I think for me, what could have been a solid 8 out of a 10 game is kind of held back a little bit, maybe like a 6.6, 6.5, because as fun as this game is to play, the problems I had with it were so bad. When I say this game constantly interrupts itself, it really is bad. It's really bad. Like imagine just trying to go to the supermarket and buy food, but somebody keeps coming up to you and talking at you and talking at you. And every task that you have to do throughout your day, somebody's constantly freaking nagging at you and talking to you, over explaining everything. It really, really gets on your nerves. And there's some design choices that really bothered me too. Like the final boss, you have to go through this weird area to get to him. And it's not that big of a deal. But if you die to him a lot, after a while, you're just going to be sitting there like, all right, can we just get there already? There's just some weird design choices. And like I said, some people to you, this might be a solid 8 out of a 10 or higher, maybe lower, I don't know. But for me personally, I want to give it like an 8, but I can't. I just can't. Some those annoying issues were so annoying. I just can't give it that. I don't like giving games numbers anyway, but for me, it's like a 6.5. You take out those problems, definitely an 8. I don't know. I'm rambling now. I do think it's worth playing if you're into Souls-like games, and you don't mind that it's kind of cartoony and goofy. Yeah, try it. I would probably say get Steel Rising first because it isn't as full of fluff as this one is, but it's this is probably the better game, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, if you're into these games, check it out. Maybe for the price, I think it's like $45. You're definitely getting your money's worth here. There is a lot of content here. But you still could wait maybe for a sale, maybe for it to go down to like, 40, 35, 30, I don't know. But I don't think you'll be too disappointed if you pay full price either. But this is already way too long and I'm going to wrap it up here. So if you're the one person to watch this video, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. It means a lot to me. And I will see you in the next one.